folks, Nita Finley, and we're doing the Zoomer Times TV presentation today. And we have a wonderful author. She's not only did she write a book, but she wrote about her experiences as a dog trainer, as a dog lover. And today we have her husband, who has been her right side partner in many ways too, helping her. So welcome to Peggy Lovelock and Frank Lovelock. Hello.
Hi, Nita.
And I want to just show you the picture of her book. That's a precious dog. It's a Shih Tzu, just like I have. And they say it all with their eyes and their face. So it's a book you're going to want to read. Even if you're not a dog lover, you'll learn how to love dogs. But I'm going to put that down and we're going to get started. So Peggy, tell us, let's go back to your book, because it's a very precious book. And I want people to know why you wrote the book, what's happening with your dogs. And I'm just going to let you talk. And then Frank, you just jump in and Peggy can ask you a question however you want to do it. It's really your show. I'm just kind of here to give you a punch or two here.
Okay. Well, I wrote the book because we've all said at one time or another, if we've had some kind of great experience, I would love to write a book about that, correct? So the opportunity arose. Melva Michaelian, who is, it's with her. She didn't write any of it, but she herself is an author. She came to me for lessons. And when she heard the story, she said, write something down for me. She says, I want to maybe see if there's something here. And she felt there was. So it went from there. And I would write pages. I'd write the stories of Mr. Sims. In fact, I gave her a preview before I ever even had him and started training. And it just exploded from there. And finally, we got it down on paper and got it published. And it's quite a story about him.
Yeah, right. And Frank, did Peggy, did she make you make all the meals and do everything, the laundry and everything while she was working?
She never missed a beat, actually. She's really good that way. And she would spend whatever time she could sitting here at the computer, just working. I get home from work and she'd say, you got to see what I did today. I added a piece, you'll remember it. And it's amazing because I lived it all, so much of it with her. And she kept notes, she kept a diary actually for the dog. And from those notes, she just put it all back together. It's astonishing. It's actually all there, just as it happened. It's exciting.
Yeah, I remember reading it that, how did she remember all this and everything about the dog and the person who was judging? But we're jumping ahead, Peggy. So you decided to write this book, but why don't you tell everybody what your experiences have been before you actually got this wonderful dog that your book is so much about, and it's the Mr. Sims. Just tell us how you even got started with dogs.
Okay. Well, as a child growing up, I could have no pets because my mother was a bad asthmatic. But there were people in the family that had dogs, and I always had a connection with them. I always loved to be around them and, watch them and see what they did and all that. Then when Frank and I got married, this poodle puppy literally adopted us. And I had no idea about training. I had no idea how to take care of a dog at that time. So as I recount in the book, I made a lot of mistakes. And so that's when I tell my clients, when they start making mistakes, I said, hey, been there, done that. We've all, it's forgivable. You can always undo it usually. And then we moved up to Massachusetts from Long Island. And of course, the poodle came with us, but I had always wanted an English bulldog. And I happened to see an ad in the paper for an English bulldog puppy. And I called the lady and she said, fine. She asked me all these questions. You'd think I was adopting a child.
Exactly.
That's great. I appreciated that.
Yeah.
So Frank came home and I'm all excited. I said, oh, guess what? Let's go see, And I said to him, it doesn't mean we have to take her, But let's just
Fatal
go see.
words.
Meantime, I got my fingers crossed behind my back, like, yeah, right, we're coming home with that dog, you know. So we went up, it was way up north in the state of Massachusetts. And we met the dog, and it was love at first sight. I mean, that English bulldog was just, they're so ugly, they're beautiful, you know,
Right.
and their temperament and everything. She was just great. So we had her for quite a while. In the meantime, the poodle passed away, and the dog kind of went through a grieving period. So we then at that time were in the process of buying this house. And I thought, oh, great, you know, maybe this will kind of break everything up for her, which it did. And then we had her for a good while. They only live about 9 years. They're bulldogs don't have longevity, but it was a great 9 years. Then when we lost her, Frank that Christmas bought me a chow. And all I knew was you had to be real careful with them and train them, which this dog was bred for temperament. She had a beautiful temperament, but I took her for training. And that's sort of where the ball got rolling, because I went to a couple of classes and I wasn't really happy. There was a lot of aversive training. And to me, for a 4-month-old puppy, you don't do that. You don't do that. You build the relationship. So it went from there, and I started to educate myself, you know, with reading books, watching tapes. I took a course in training, and she came along, she very nicely. Then we lost her. And when we did, I said, that's it. I can't have my heart broken again. No
Right.
more dogs. Well, and at that time I had started my training business. Well, guess who walks into my life? Mr. Sims. And the rest was history from there. But that's how it really got started.
Oh, see, I hadn't known about that. That wasn't in your book that I recall.
Yeah, about taking the dog to training. The
No,
chow.
about your feelings and what happened with your other dogs and all.
Oh yes, yeah. It was always a heartbreaker to lose one, which you probably know and understand.
Oh, absolutely. But okay, well, I didn't realize that. What were you doing before you even started with the training? Were you teaching? I forget what you were doing.
No, I had been working part-time for an eye doctor. And then something was wrong. I wasn't feeling well. And something was wrong. And I went from doctor to doctor to doctor, and the blood work's coming up fine. Everything's coming up fine. Can't figure it out. What was happening was we had a faulty furnace, and it was carbon monoxide poisoning.
Mm-hmm.
And this was going on, and I had to stop working. Frank had problems with it on the weekend, but because he was out of the house most of the time, he didn't come under the same influence that I did from it. So I wasn't doing it. I wasn't working. I was at home. I couldn't work. There was nothing I could do. Then when we finally found out what the problem was and got better, one of the things that I had read in trying to come out of the damage that had been done is you retrain your brain. You learn different skills. And so we tried bridge, which didn't work out, because try to count with your brain all scrambled. No, didn't work. We did ballroom dancing, which was helpful physically, you know, and mentally. But then I got interested. We then had the chow, and I started getting interested in the training, learning new skills, and that's where we went from there.
I see. Well, that's a very good lead up to what your book is. So I love the story about how you wound up, you know, with Mr. Sims, because it could have been very tragic, but you rescued this wonderful dog.
Yeah, well, and in fact, when the owner called me and wanted me to take him, I still wasn't ready. But I said to Frank, he's too good of a dog to go to the pound.
Yeah, gosh.
And for various reasons, I figured if he ever ended up in the pound, he might very well end up euthanized.
Oh,
So
think about it.
I said, you know what? I will take him, but I'm going to try and find people. I will like foster him and try and find people. Well, I made different calls. Well, either they wanted a bigger dog or they were in an apartment. They couldn't take a dog. For some reason, he was supposed to stay right here,
Yeah,
which he did.
it's so cute. So Frank, do you feel the same way, as Peggy does about animals? I get the feeling you do, but how did you get started loving animals?
Well, I was fortunate in that we did have a dog when I was a kid. And for a long period of time, his name was Rusty. He was a little Labrador mix. He was small. And I had a couple of friends and they had dogs. And we used to walk them on long, long walks together. And we had all kinds of fun and did all kinds of things. And I was just very, very comfortable with dogs. So when we met, actually, I felt like I was the dog person and Peg wasn't.
Ah,
And it's so interesting that she's just grown into the dog person. She has this wonderful ability to watch and listen and understand from observing. So in pretty short order, when she got involved in it, she knew much more about dogs than I did. And I began to learn from her. But I loved them from very early on and was around them and very happy for us to have them.
of course, I don't understand why people don't like dogs. And I'll just tell you a funny experience. I went to the post office late one night. There's a special post office that's open till 9. And I brought Jack with me. And Jack is peaceful, quiet, but a woman, and now you have to space. So there were places you couldn't be near someone. So I was like 2 to 3 spaces away, and a woman starts screaming, "Get your dog out of here. I'm afraid of dogs." And I said to myself, the dog's very far away. It's not. She was so upset. I didn't want to get out of line, but I guess something must have happened to her or something, huh, Peggy?
Well, I'll tell you, that leads me into a kind of an interesting story. When we were first married and we got our apartment in Bayside, Queens, we lived on the 3rd floor. Underneath us, on the 2nd floor apartment, there was this very nice couple, but she was petrified. I don't know what ever happened to her, but there was a man that lived in the apartment complex, and he had this little poodle. It was like a teacup poodle. If she even saw him coming, holding that dog, she'd slam herself up against the wall. I mean, just totally, totally petrified. So we all knew, when you saw her, you respected her distance. Well, we've kept in touch over the years, just Christmas cards. Hi, how are you? Is everybody fine? What's going on? So I happened to send her, not this Christmas, but the Christmas before, about how I had written the book. Thinking, of all people, this is not one that's going to buy a book about a dog. Okay. This Christmas, I get a Christmas card from her, and she wrote it. I read your book. Bravo. Great story. And I was just like you. My mouth fell open. I said to Frank, of all people, I said, that shows what that book can do and who it touches.
I mean, it is, and I have to tell everybody, it's not a small book. It's loaded. It's actually has 400. Let me see. No, it has almost 400. Well, it's 386, I think. Let me just look at this. About 86 pages. But the book is not really. It's on training, but it's really on dogs and your feelings and when they get sick and what to do. And Peggy, you really should have been a vet. You know that.
Although, Anita, when Peg does training, very often a client will say to her, "Do you do children?" So it really is good.
Husbands and children. Do you do husbands and children?
I left that out. I've got to ask, though, if Peg could tell one story. Of all the great stories that made the book, there were other ones that just didn't make the book. And this is my favorite story. Is about a dog. And when you'd say down, he
wouldn't do it.
Yeah, she's got to tell you because it's so funny how she got this dog to go down through a misunderstanding the dog had.
This was a client who would come to me with two or three of her other dogs, rescued this pug who had been in a hoarding situation. And it was very sad because the woman that did all the hoarding died. And she was dead in the house for 3 days. And then the authorities came in, whether they were doing a wellness check or what, I don't know. But when they walked in, it was floor to ceiling crates with dogs. Some of them had survived.
Oh my gosh.
Some of them did not. But anyway, they brought out the ones that had survived, and they took them to the vets, and they were nursed back to health. So then my client got a call about, would she take one of these pugs? So she said, sure. Well, next thing you know, I get the phone call. She said, I want to bring him to you, you know. Well, absolutely, the most adorable little pug you ever wanted to see, and smart, just smart. And he'd do, when it came to the walking well on a leash, when it came to a sit, an automatic sit, when she would walk with him and stop, he'd immediately sit. Everything that we taught him, he did, except when we got to teaching him to go down. He wouldn't do it. So, you know, as I say in the book, there's more than one way to teach a dog how to sit. Well, there's also more than one way to teach him how to go down. And there's a certain amount of, there's a physical thing where you can actually put them down and then praise them. You can reward them with treats. There's got to be at least 6 different ways to teach a dog to go down. So every week she'd come back and I'd say, well, try this. And she'd come back, how did it go? Nope, he wouldn't do it. One of the things I said to her, she had 2 other dogs at the time who knew, they had been trained, they knew how to go down. I said, okay, or rather ignore Gus was the pug's name. I said, ignore him. Take out your other 2 dogs, play with them a little bit, tell them down. And when they do, go in and give them some really good treats. I said, maybe Gus will start watching them and say, huh, that's pretty cool. So she comes back. I said, how did that work? She said, Peggy, he can, and she goes through the whole list of things, and he's gotten up in a chair and he's sitting there looking at us like he knows every word we're saying, right? She says, goes through the whole list of things he can do. But she said, when it comes to the down, just forget it. And he goes down in the chair. So I grab a little piece of hot dog and I go, good down, Gus, good down, you know, emphasizing down because he went down. So next thing you know, he's sitting up again, he's looking. And she is just so beside herself. She goes through the whole litany again. And she says, but when it comes to the down, just forget it. He goes down. So I look at her, I give him a treat, and I say, good down, Gus, good boy. But I look at her, I said, you may think I'm crazy, and you might be right. But I said, what I want you to do is take him off the chair, walk him around the room. We know when you stop, he's going to sit. I said, don't move a muscle, don't point, don't do anything. Just say, just forget it. Doggone it if that dog didn't go down. To this day, I don't understand. But whenever you'd say to him, just forget it, I could do that to him. I could tell him stay. I could walk around the room. I could walk out of the room. I could push chairs around. I could make, he wouldn't move a muscle till I went back to him. And then he was all happy. To this day, I don't understand what went on in his head. But my point in telling the story is I think other trainers might have been a lot more physically strong with him, and it wouldn't have gone anywhere.
Could you imagine him?
And it could have made other problems come up from it, huh?
Yeah.
You can imagine if the dog was in competitive obedience and the judge said, please down your dog, and she would say, just forget it. The dog would go down.
Well, do you think that when it was a puppy that it was something bad happened when it went down?
I have no idea. The only thought I had possibly was where this woman had all these dogs stacked up, that maybe if she went out or was fixing their meal or something and they all started to get excited, that she yelled at them, just forget it. That's about the only thing. And so then they'd lay down and be quiet. That's the only thing. Other than that, I have not a clue.
That's a good idea. Maybe they all laid down then.
Yeah, that is
know.
possible. Just forget it, right?
Yeah.
Well, excuse me. Go back to the woman who had all the dogs. What's in the mind of a person like that?
I don't know. I would say it's an illness of some kind. You know, just like people hoard groceries that they're never going to use, and they go shopping and buy clothes that they're never going to wear. But for some reason, in some people, they hoard an animal, a group of animals for some reason.
Well,
Yeah, but
maybe-
animals need so much care and attention and affection. And I
Yes,
mean, that sounds, on one hand, it sounds beautiful that she took these dogs. Probably she got them from a,
but
you
they
know,
weren't cared for. They
that's
were not
right.
proper.
That's the problem. You can't care for them unless you had a big farm and they were out there. But I can imagine for 3 days, these poor little creatures and oh, I can't even think about it.
I know.
But well, let's just go back to the book. Is there anything in the book that you would have changed if you had to rewrite it? Was there something that, it was very poignant? Because you see, well, I have to say this one, it's called Rescuing an Animal, Heal, Heel, Mr. Sims, Heal. Why don't you explain the title? That'll say a lot, I think.
Well, it's Rescuing an Angel. Heal, Mr. Sims, Heal. The first heal, Heel, has to do with when you're doing competitive obedience and you want the dog to walk right next to you, right in line. In fact, the guidelines on that is supposed to be the dog's right ear lined up with your left knee, which is almost impossible, unless you've got, well, a border collie, golden retriever, whatever, they'll do it. But, Shih Tzu sort of like, yeah, well, whatever.
That's right.
Yeah. And the second heel, Heel, was what I called peeling the onion, where I found he had different physical issues that came up over the time that I had him. In fact, when I got him, which I do recount in the book, I had him for a while. And then one night I fed him and he turned away from the dish and started literally crawling across the floor. And I knew something was really wrong.
Huh.
And
Right.
time went by and then he whoopsed up his meal. But when I looked at it to clean it up, it looked like there was this big mushroom, as though you had taken a mushroom and sliced it from the head down to the stem. And it was a good sized piece. It was a piece of toy that he had ingested evidently as a puppy. And I had already had him several months before this happened.
Huh.
So
Right.
that ended up sort of, for lack of a better term, let's say it caused like an ulceration. And so I had to be really careful and I had to watch him what I fed him. I had to watch and see you could tell when he had a good day and when he was having a bad day, when that tummy was bothering him, even though there may be no outward signs as far as vomiting or diarrhea or anything, and then it went from there, from different issues that he had.
But also you were sick. And by having him, it made you have something to love and to care for.
Right. Well, I was still, to some degree, it took a long time to come away from the damage from the carbon monoxide.
Right.
And then I, showed up with this ovarian tumor that was ridiculous. And he was there. So I was there for him when he was sick. He was there for me when I was sick. And of course, Frank was there for both of us.
Of course. But there is something about dogs. And, I have friends that have cats. And I always think, well, how can a cat be as, how can, but I know it's true. It's just, I've had cats years ago, but there's nothing for me like a dog rather than a cat. But people feel the same way about cats. Have you ever trained cats?
Not really, other than, which I think I said to you in the last interview, when I used to go next door to train my neighbor's 2 dogs, she had a cat and Holly was just a great little cat. But I used to buy special cat treats for her. And because she'd look at me training the dogs, and if I'd be treating them, she'd be looking at me like, well, how about over here,
Right.
And so then I started to think, well, maybe, just maybe, with some of the cat treats, I can get her to do something.
Okay.
And I worked and I worked and I worked, and I finally got her that she would salute. And
Salute.
Yes, she'd give you a salute. And I had this whole dialogue that went with it. And believe me, it took quite a while to get her to understand, how to salute. But it would be, okay, Holly, we're at the Memorial Day parade. Here comes the band. Here comes the flag. What are you going to do? Boom. And she'd give you a salute, and I'd give her a couple of cat treats. So
I don't remember reading that in the book.
No, it wasn't in the book.
I know, I was going to say, that's really phenomenal.
Well, actually, the book was over 500 pages
Right.
when we finished. But Melva said to me, she was afraid that publishers, because of what type of book it was, I'm not like some big celebrity, with my story. She was afraid that with that kind of volume, nobody would pick it up. So she said, now you got to cut it back. And unfortunately, there were things that I had to cut out that, but you had to cut it down to size. And I still wanted to be careful not to lose the thread of Sim's story, cut it in so deeply that you'd start to lose that.
Do you know what? I've often thought that it was kind of Melva's method, because she taught English in college, I think, and writing. And I think what she did was she got Peg to get everything into that book. First, let's get it all there. And then she said, now we got to cut it back and refine it and bring it in, which proved to be a chore. I think she wanted it to be 300 and something. And
I think 250.
Even she couldn't get it down any further, because what was in it was really good. She was starting to lose really great stuff, like Gus Forget It is a great story too.
Yeah, very, right. Yeah, that's always a problem with authors. In fact, with even articles, people write an article and sometimes it's 400 or 500 words. I can't do that. And so, but that takes quite a skill to be able to take what's really important. But that's why people write 2 and 3, 4 books as a series so that they can get everything in there. Has that occurred to you?
On occasion, yes, it has.
Right.
But what is holding me back, to some degree, it's not a cheap hobby. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
and if you want to get something published, it costs. So
I know it does. Yeah. But at least it's out. This was great. And we're just about out of time. But I have to tell you, this book, Rescuing an Angel, Heal Mr. Sim's Heal, Peggy Lovelock with Melva Michaelian. It's Michaelian or Michaelian? Michaelian, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. And we have Frank Lovelock, of course, her dear husband, on the Zoom with us. You can pick this book up at Amazon.com. You'll never forget it if you get it. You will not. It's so sweet. And it's very instructive. I've learned a lot, even though I have a Shih Tzu who doesn't want to do any of the things that you've instructed. But of course, he's 9. I got him, I got him a year ago, so he was already trained in a sense, and it's okay. But it's very good for people who are interested in training their dog. Do you do training over the phone? I think you do too, don't you?
I do phone conferences, and now I'm doing some Zoom conferences.
Perfect. So if you want to, so let's you can actually let's give a phone number then if someone wants to call you, can we?
Sure. It's area 413-782-7412.
Okay, well, probably be the best money you've ever spent, and you'll just fall in love with Peggy because she falls in love with her dogs and the dog owners. And thank you, Frank, for making the time today to be with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and we'll talk again. And I got to think how I'm going to give you this rose. Maybe I need to put it in a box and just send it to you. It's going to die though on the way. Anyway, but here it is. You had it, okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, both of you. Really appreciate it.
You too, Anita.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody. We're going to go to our next interview shortly.